Audio off. Yep. All right, it's working.
It's a beautiful day in the gamerhood, a beautiful day for my gamers. Would you be one? Could you be one? Shout about thunder, but don't despair. This colony's breeding great robbers. Would you be one? Could you be one? If the 80% mortality rate works for you, for a few bucks a month you can sign up and have the Hobbs kill you. So let's make the most of another Sunday. Brew up some coffee and play it my way. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? Won't you be my gamers? Won't you please, please won't you be my gamers?
All right. Hey everyone, welcome to the Gamerhood. I am your host, Jason Hobbs, and today we are recording Hobbs and Friends number 71. At some point right now, it's just the pre-show, and without further ado, our guest is J-M DeFoggi. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing wonderful. Thanks for having me on. I've been looking forward to this.
No kidding, you only had to do this introduction 3 times so far.
You know what? Practice makes perfect, right?
One more time for the podcast, and then we'll be done. Hey, thanks for sticking with us so far, Phantom of Truth. We appreciate it. Or, I mean, I do anyway. I mean, I'm assuming JM does as well. Do you want to tell everyone who Phantom of Truth is?
Phantom of Truth is a good friend, a friend of the Iconic Podcast, which is the channel that I do a lot of my broadcasting from. And we do several podcasts on there. And Phantom found us when we were streaming Ulysses games, which I'm sure we'll talk about later, and became a good friend of the show, a good friend, is our moderator, and now actually works for Ulysses and is involved in several of the playtests for some new games that I'm working on. So it's been just a joy to have him along this journey. So.
All right. Well, that's pretty cool. Welcome to the Gamerhood, Phantom of Truth. I'm assuming you don't have a ton of questions for JM. You could ask me questions if you want. I don't know, but that's up to you. Here at the Gamerhood, what we're going to do is we're going to do a little pre-show usually, and then we actually record the episode of Hobbs and Friends, where I'll capture the audio, and then we'll have a post show where anybody who's in the chats, either on YouTube or on Twitch, can, ask JM or me questions, and we can just have a partay. I heard someone's drinking some whiskey, so
that's true.
Maybe that'll be part of it, right?
My Sazerac, yeah.
Yeah, everyone grab their whiskeys, and hopefully they can be entertained here. So the podcast will be about 40 minutes, but as far as the pre-show and post-show go, I don't care. It's good. I can hang out as long as you want to. We can do whatever you want to do. So that'll be fun. All right. Is that a question for right now, Phantom of Truth, or later? So Phantom of Truth says, why Mad Honey?
So in the world of jackals, there is a specific honey that is inspired by this weird story that I found out. There's honey, and I believe it's in Turkey and Syria, where the bees land on psychedelic plants and they transfer the pollen into the honey, and it's basically like a psychoactive honey. They call it mad honey. There's several other names for it, but when I saw that and the fact that it's basically been around as long as humanity has been, I was like, this has to go into jackals. This is just too good of a thing to pass up. And so in the very first game that Phantom played in, his character either bought or was exposed to mad honey. And and in fact, in one of my other games, there's this little cross stitch back here that one of my gamers made for me. We were play testing jackals, and my wife had knocked over several jugs of this stuff and was fighting with snakes, and she kept trying to do something, and my response was always, no, you're honey wrestling the snakes. And so our friend actually cross stitch, no, you can't do that. You're honey wrestling snakes on a little board for me, which is just fantastic.
Oh my, that's wonderful. That's awesome. All right, that was a good question. Looking forward to the next one, Phantom of Truth. So I have to admit, I haven't read a ton of Jackals, and we'll talk about that later. But I do know that Kevin really enjoyed it, and a lot of the guys that play on Kevin's channel liked it. And I knew that you were active there, so I hadn't been doing any podcasts for months. So I thought it would be a friendly person that friend of a friend kind of thing would be fun.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, I bought the book. I think it was cool, and I have a funny story when I bought it. So
Awesome.
I'm pretty excited about that. All right.
Kevin did his map of Jackals and actually sent me a copy, which was just super cool.
He's a great artist.
He is. And the funny thing is I've been watching Kevin's channel for maybe years.
Oh, really?
And my son wanted to go on a walk. And I was like, well, okay, hold on. Before we go on a walk, let's eat lunch. So I just turned on YouTube to find something for us to watch while we ate lunch before we went on our walk. And it's like, Dungeon Users going live. I'm like, sweet. Wait, that's the Jackals cover. And it was just mind-blowing to see Kevin, who I'd been following, running my game. It was very surreal.
That's awesome. That's exciting, man. I could see that. To me, Kevin is like, some guy I've been gaming with for 5 years or whatever.
Oh, that's awesome. Before
his channel got big like it is now, we were playing, I don't even know. We played together in a Shadow of the Demon Lord game with Jared Rasher, who was running the game. And back then I was like, I don't know why anyone would want to do actual plays. I was doing the podcast, Hobbs and Friends, but it was only 3 years ago probably, but there weren't a lot back then. It doesn't seem like. Maybe it was 5 years. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
I will say Shadow of the Demon Lord is a great game.
The plan was to do 12 sessions, and Kevin and I were both players, and Jared Rasher actually writes reviews for Gnome Stew now.
Oh,
that's who he is. I don't know if you've heard of Gnome Stew before.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, semi-famous, internet famous people, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, all right. So I don't know if I said this already this time on the live stream, but we're going to do a pre-show. We'll do the Hobbs and Friends. I won't pay attention to chat. And then we'll do a post-show, and then that'll be all about interacting with the YouTube and Twitch chat and questions. So feel free to comment in the chat, and I'll try and work it in during the interview. Otherwise, I'm not going to say your name or anything like that. That's just the way it works, I guess. But maybe we'll change it. Hell, I don't know, man. This is a work in progress. I've not done this in months. Yeah, it is the Wild West. All right, so I think we'll just start, if that's cool with you.
It works for me.
All right, so it's going to be a similar situation where we'll start the audio recording on the other application that we had there. And then I'll do a little introduction kind of thing, and then we'll start going over the outline as much as we feel like it.
All right.
All right, except I don't have the outline up anymore. All right, I should open that. Oh, maybe I did. Okay, guys, I am a professional. Oh, yeah, there it is. All right, nice. How exciting. I'm still kind of freaked out about Torg Fading Suns, to be honest. All right, so I'm going to start this other application. So, all right, I'll give you a countdown. I hope all you guys out in Chatland are ready. Chatland sounds funny. Is that what you guys call it, Chatland, or do you call?
I think we just refer to it as the chat, but I may have to co-op Chatland because
Chatland sounds legit.
It does.
Back when I first started doing my podcast and I was recording at my kitchen table, this cat used to get in every episode, but hasn't lately. So I'm excited to see you're in here at the new battle station. All right, Chatland, I'm going to count down and we'll start this other recording and then we'll send this off to the editor. Are you ready, my man?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
I almost forgot how to do two. Hey everybody, welcome to Hobbs and Friends. I am your host, Jason Hobbs, and first of all would like to say I'm super happy to be on the mics again. I know it's been months, but hopefully it was worth the wait. No, that's probably building it up too much. I hope you just enjoy the show, and I have a great guest for you. Believe it or not, I was talking to someone who hadn't heard of the game that this guy wrote, and I was stunned into silence. I'm not going to say any names, but it might have been Sean P. Kelly from Gaming and BS. So Gaming and BS people, you guys just aren't on the level of the Hobbs Goblins. Anyhow, this guy, I found he told me I was searching deep to get some information here. He is a game designer. He wrote Shadowcraft The Glamour War, Shadowcraft Mission Folio, Jackals, Bronze Age Fantasy Role-Playing, The Fall of the Children of Bronze, and is a line developer for 13th Age. He's none other than J-M DeFoggi. How are we doing, J-M?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on, Jason. This is exciting. I'm looking forward to it.
I'm super pleased at how many times you can go through an introduction on one night. So you're doing a great job. All right. So the first segment of the show is normally trying to introduce the guest and get to know each other a little bit. Like, normally we talk about how we know each other, and I kind of almost feel like we do now after this.
That's right.
This half an hour or hour of trying to get ready for the show tonight. But other than that, you have no idea who I am, though we are both fans of Kevin Madison and the Dungeon Musers YouTube channel, right?
Yeah, 100%. Like, I've been following his channel for years, and as I was sharing before the show started, like, to see him running Jackals, I was poleaxed. My son thought it was the coolest thing. My wife was like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, do you understand what's going on? Like, look Jackals on the screen."
Did she understand?
She did. She actually edits
nice.
For role-playing games.
That's awesome.
That's her job. So she edits.
All right. So I got some zines that I'll be sending. No, I'm just kidding. Maybe I'm not kidding. I don't know. We'll see.
Who knows?
All right. So that's cool. And like, I saw that you had talked after Kevin did a lot of the Jackals run that he had done, and I know that he wants to get back to it. I saw that you were actually very active on Kevin's Discord channel, the Dungeon Musers Discord channel, and I wanted to get a show going, and you seem like the perfect candidate, and so thanks again for being on the show.
Seriously, my pleasure. When you reached out, I got to look at some of the old shows, and Arlen had me on his show, so we were talking about books on there as well, and so it was just awesome to kind of see all of the threads connecting.
I'd say it's a small world, but it is a small world sometimes.
It is, yeah.
Awesome. All right, so next let's talk a little about what we've been doing in gaming. So it looks like you have some cool stuff on here. You want to talk about it?
I mean, sure, if you want. So I run I run like 5 games a week, but 2 of them are play tests for something that I will just tease at this point. I run Torg and Fading Suns on the Ulysses International channel, and Ulysses Spiel publishes games like The Dark Eye and the Aventuria board game, and then they brought Torg back, Torg Eternity, which if you're not familiar with it, the best way I've ever heard it explained is it's set on an Earth if Die Hard was a documentary, and then that Earth gets invaded by 7 other realities. So there's like this reality overlays England, and now it's this fantasy world, and the Middle East and North Africa is now like 1930s pulp superheroes, and Russia gets nuked and is Hellraiser meets Mad Max, and so there's all these cosms that are vying for control of Earth, and so it's a little like Rifts, except where Rifts stirs all of the ingredients together. Up until this point, Torg is kind of like all of these different realities are sort of all trying to take over Earth, but it was kind of a concerted effort. So it's very cinematic. It uses cards, it uses dice. It's a very sort of over-the-top, very cinematic RPG. And then Fading Suns is this science fiction game set like 3,000 years in the future. where the stars have started to go out, and so you have like almost a Rome-like empire that spreads out from Earth, and then it collapses. And so it's sort of like medieval science fiction. So like Dune has it's got a lot of touchstones with Dune. And so I run those games on Tuesdays and Thursday nights. And then on Wednesdays, I run my personal game, which right now is a RuneQuest Glorantha game. And I love it. Like RuneQuest, Glorantha is, it's one of the shows, we do a podcast called Exploring Glorantha, and it's just brilliant. Like, I love Greg Stafford's design. I love the mechanics. Like, it's one of my white whale games that I've been trying to get to the table for years. And now we're entering almost to year 4 of playing the game.
Oh, nice. And all these are recorded. These are actual plays or podcasts, or actual plays on podcasts or on video.
Yeah. So the Fading Suns and the Tor game are live on Twitch on Tuesdays and Thursday nights, and then get pushed over to YouTube. But the RuneQuest Glorantha game is just a game that I play with my friends. I don't want like the stress of making it an actual play. Like, we can just focus and be as silly or as crazy or as gonzo as we want to be, and not have to worry about an audience or anything like that.
I can appreciate that. Did you hear that, Ulysses people? None of you are his friends. No.
That is not true. But...
Just kidding. All right. I do that. I mean, there for a while, I was running 5 games a week myself, every weekly, and I can understand how that goes. So I can appreciate what you are going through. And I've heard of this Ulysses channel, but I've never checked it out personally or anything like that. So that sounds awesome. I just recently played Rollmaster. I got back on the Dungeon Muser YouTube channel recently, playing Rollmaster in this game that we started playing on Friday nights. And I'm playing a psychic. Have you ever played Rollmaster?
Back in the day, I think the very first RPG I bought was Middle-earth role-playing. So I started off with Rollmaster Lite. And
so do you say MERP or MERPs?
Oh, I say MERP.
I think most people do.
Am I wrong?
No, I don't think there is a
Middle-earth role-playing system.
Yeah, but almost everyone says MERP. I have ran into a few, and some Texas people. I thought it was located in Texas. So when you mentioned Texas earlier, I thought, but you're a transient to Texas, right?
I'm a transplant. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Just arrived here.
Yeah, so I had fun playing Rollmaster and using some mentalist type stuff. That's what it's called on Rollmaster, I think, not a psychic. It's mentalist. Yeah. So it was fun. We're like 5th level or something. I didn't make the early sessions because I was moving and all this stuff, but I guess we're going to play it on Fridays. So if you guys want to check out some crazy people play Rollmaster Friday nights on YouTube, on the Dungeon Musers YouTube channel. And obviously you can do some stuff on Tuesday. I'm going to run a game tomorrow night for the first time in forever. Or you can go over to the Ulysses International channel and catch some Torg and Fading Suns. Are those alternating every other week, or one's Tuesdays and one's
on
Thursday?
Tuesday, and Fading Suns is on Thursday.
Well, I'm pretty sure you'd rather check out Low Fantasy Gaming than Torg, but I don't know.
Hey, if you're a fan of this podcast, you should go check out the Low Fantasy Gaming. Go over to the Ulysses YouTube channel on Wednesday. And
what's on Wednesday?
We post it to YouTube on Wednesday.
Oh, okay,
so
perfect.
We have the archives all on YouTube on the Ulysses International channel.
All right, there you go. I feel like we're sucking each other's dick. I don't know if you're supposed to say that on Twitch, but that's great. That's an old saying from here. We're like patting each other on the back a lot.
That's right.
All right. Anyhow, so I was at Gamehole Con. We're moving into the segment called Everything About You. Have you ever heard of Ugly Kid Joe, J-M?
Mm-mm.
No? They did a song from the 80s called I Hate Everything About You. So look that up, people. But I'm in this trivia thing on Thursdays, and I've been doing it now for like 6 months, it feels like. And I recently had the song that I talk about on this podcast for years now was on, and I didn't even know who sang it at the time. I felt terrible. And so at Gamehole, someone was making fun of me for not knowing it. And he said that from now on, I should never be able to have this segment in my show anymore.
Oh, is that why
I
it's the last time for this segment?
it might be the last time for this segment. I won't say any names, of course, but it might have been Lord Burnick from Spellburn fame. Do you ever play Dungeon Crawl Classics, JM?
Oh yeah, I've got a DCC over there and some Linkmar goodness, and then
Do you listen to their podcast?
Yes.
Never Do It Again?
Yeah.
Just kidding. Yeah, so that's Julian. Judge Julian is who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Is one of my arch nemesis. Not really. We're buddies, but we talk a lot of crap to each other. All right. So anyhow, the segment of the show is usually you say something about yourself that the audience isn't aware of, just so people can get to know you. When I started, I didn't want to do a whole first episode that was all about me. I just thought I would piece it out as I go. But I mean, this is episode 71. I'm sure everyone knows everything there is to know about me by now. So maybe we'll just change it into something else. I don't know what it'll be. Maybe it'll be Theory of a Dead Man. Don't they have a song I hate? I don't know. Anyway, you got anything you want to share? Did I put you on the spot?
You put me on the spot. Let's see here. Things that people may not know about me. Well,
just one if you want. Just one is all we need.
So I have many passions, but one of them is actually creating new ways and twists on old fashions. And so my wife built me a little bar, and so I have a multitude of whiskeys over there, and I'm constantly tinkering and remixing and trying new ways to come up with like new and unique flavors for like holiday seasons. I've got a really good chai old-fashioned syrup that I make for the Christmas season, and I've got like a smoked cherry old-fashioned that I do. And it's just I started off in college as an engineer, so it's kind of my love of chemistry. But I decided I just couldn't be an engineer. Like I would have, it would have slowly drained my soul away.
All right, so now you just do chemistry with alcohol. Is that what you're saying?
That's right, chemistry with alcohol, bitters, and sugar. That's
fantastic. Do you make your own bitters?
I make my own bitters. I make my own simple syrups.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Party at Jam's house.
That's right.
That's right after North Texas RPG Con. You ever gone to that?
No, but I will be going this next year. So.
All right.
It's only 10 minutes from my house.
Okay, that's great. I'm
whiskey at my house for after day 2 of.
Dude, I'm going to hold you to that because
if you were in the Dallas area for North Texas RPG Con, I will make you I will bring an old fashioned, or we'll come and have drinks and a game afterwards.
I quit drinking, but I will try one for you just to visit. But I just talked to Mike Bad Mike. I don't know if you know who that is, but okay, at Gamehole, and that was one of the questions I asked him. Is there gonna, because Doug Ray had passed away, and he was the one that ran all of North Texas RPG Con, so. Super excited to know that one of Doug's last wishes is that they kept the con going. So
that's awesome.
It was a pretty cool conversation with Mike. So thanks to him for letting me know about that. So we got a lot of people. We got a lot of your fans in the Twitch, man. It's pretty exciting.
I'm a little embarrassed. Thanks, guys.
All right. Don't be embarrassed. This is great. All right. So I got to find the thing. I lost my track. All right, perfect. So I think we covered most of the things. I think everyone knows everything about me. Everybody knows everything about you. So now we can talk about the main topic. If I was a professional, I'd have like a main topic sound. So let's say Rich, add a main topic sound. He's our editor. Thanks to Rich. But so I wanted to talk about jackals, but almost more importantly to me, not to you, obviously, is this concept of simulating ages in RPGs. So Dungeons and Dragons has always been just like an amalgam, right, of different eras and just a mess. Like more crunchy games like to get into more specific ages and simulate those ages, like with the type of weapons they have, the type of armor, whatever's going on in the world of that age. They either poured it into their own fantasy setting, a la, how do you pronounce it? Zaharits? Is that it or no?
Zaharits, yeah.
Yeah, Zaharits, yeah, like the Zaharits in your setting. So that's what I really wanted to talk to you. And I knew we could talk about all the other cool stuff that you do and find out about you. But I just wanted to know what your opinions were on the concept of why you picked the Bronze Age, maybe, and how important it was to try and simulate that era in your game Jackals. So before you get into it, though, I wanted to share my story with you.
Yeah, go
so,
for it.
Like I was saying, I probably heard something from Jackals a few different places, but when Kevin ran it, I was like, oh, I better check it out. And so I bought it at the local gaming store in Chicago. I live in Northern Illinois. And when I
That's
put
where
it
I
up,
was born and raised.
oh, in Northern Illinois, in Chicago.
Yeah, Waukegan, Illinois.
Oh, nice, man. That's not
Yeah.
far from me. I live
Yeah.
near Rockford, actually, so I'm a
Okay,
little
yeah.
far west.
Yeah.
But I picked up the book. I was like, oh, here's that Jackals, and put it on the counter with this other massive stuff. Like we bought the new BattleTech box set, and we bought some different things, my cousin and I. But when the guy was checking us out, and this wasn't like a teenager, this is like an adult man, obviously a geeked out dude who loves gaming and everything else.
Yeah.
He's looking at all the stuff and making comments. When he saw Jackals, he looked at it and he goes, Bronze Age? Why would anybody want to play a game in the Bronze Age? And I was like, why would anyone want to buy a book from a guy who's going to make fun of what he's buying? I'm going to buy it somewhere else, buddy. No, I didn't buy it anywhere else, but I've been complaining about that since it happened. But I just thought it was a funny story. So why don't you talk about, maybe why you chose the Bronze Age, first of all?
Well, there's two things that kind of come together. As one, I love Glorantha, and Glorantha is in the Bronze Age, but it is pretty far removed from kind of our own historical Bronze Age. Not to say that Jackals is a historical role-playing game, because I wanted magic, I wanted my own take on things, but also it kind of came out of, I got a master's, I went back to school for a master's, and I got a master's of biblical languages and ancient Near East mythologies. And so I have a love for the language. I have a love for the myths and the stories and the cultures of that time. And as you said, right, like D&D, like I don't think since probably BX, maybe second edition, that it was actually a medieval game anymore. It's sort of this self-referential Gygaxian fantasy, right? All of the tropes that we love about D&D, they're no longer rooted in any sort of historical thing. But even when D&D tried to do, right, in second edition they had the Viking source book and the ancient Greece source book and the Charlemagne, or maybe Charlemagne actually works. But you see all of these Kickstarters going live for 5th edition games that are pretty far removed from kind of the basic tenets and ideas of D&D. And I love D&D. Like, I mean, I've got a ton of like second edition stuff, but I don't think it's the one-stop shop that a lot of people think it is. And so I started plotting out this game that I was going to use. I was going to run an Adventure Conqueror King. And a buddy of mine was like, well, why don't you make your own game for it? Because you keep complaining about all the things that you have to, like, force into place. And I mean, that's basically where it came from. It came from, I wanted to run a more Bronze Age game, and someone encouraged me to kind of make my own system for it. Because I think that the best games, I'm not saying that it's the only way to game, but for me, the best games are where the system and the setting are sort of intrinsically linked.
Yeah. Inherently or intrinsically.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
So, why? I mean, first of all, I guess I would ask why you think that, or maybe like how you linked setting and system in Jackals, like maybe some mechanics that you might want to mention, or like specifically like maybe what your mindset was, or like what your aesthetic, what you were trying to reach and how you reached it would be cool.
So the first thing I did is I went back and read the Iliad, the Odyssey, Judges, Herodotus, like a lot of these old classic kind of Bronze Age, late Bronze Age, early Iron Age kind of fiction. And one of the things that really struck me was, one, the numbers are always way off, right? Like when you defeat an enemy, you like add a 0 to how many soldiers they came. So you look awesome. Like you defeated this even larger, reading through Gates of Fire, Thermopylae, that sort of thing. And the other thing is, it struck me as I was reading through the Iliad. The Iliad does not read like D&D. It's not like, and then Achilles attacked Hector, and Hector took it on the shield. And then it was Hector's turn, and Hector went and did something, right? There's this back and forth, just ton of violence. And so I wanted to capture that. And so what I did was I took the D100 system and I added these things called clash points. So as long as you have a clash point left, you can spend it when someone attacks you and it turns it into an opposed roll. And if you roll better than they do, you're the one who hits. So even on an enemy's turn, you can be killing the enemy. And then it kind of came out of that, the fact that I could add a ton of extra monsters into the fight because it doesn't need to be one-on-one, because one guy with enough clash points can hold off 4 or 5 enemies at a single time. And that's kind of where the inspiration for that went. And I would say of all of the mechanical things I built for Jackals, the clash point system is kind of foundational to all of the sources that I've been reading.
All right. Like I say, I have not read much of it, just the beginning section on the setting, which I thought was really cool. I like what you did with the setting. I really believe that building conflict into in the setting or whatever campaign you're running is what people need. Without conflict, there's nothing for the characters to do, really, in my opinion. Not everyone feels that way, but I definitely feel like you did that, and that's really cool. So clash points, I'll make sure I'll actually probably run some Jackals at the Gamerhood at some point.
You let me know if you need any resources or need a player. Let me know.
For sure, we'll get into it. That reminds me, I did want to ask you. We don't have to be done talking about Jackals, but the Fall of the Children of Bronze is like a campaign, really, like an adventure path is what Paizo probably would have called it, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. So
want to talk about that?
Sure. Yeah. It's the second book for Jackals, and it's 14 adventures stretched out over 9 years. So that's also one of the things. So Jackals, one of my favorite games is The One Ring. And I love the idea of like the Darkening of Mirkwood, which is this idea that the characters that start the campaign aren't the ones that are going to finish it. Like, people will die, people will retire. And so I took kind of the Greek idea of kleos, this idea of reputation, and tied it into that. So Jackals kind of start as the outsiders. You can only do 2 adventures a season, and then you have to take a downtime action. And all of the downtime actions tie you back into the community to the point that eventually you don't want to go out on the adventure because you've got this lucrative business, or you're, the advisor to the king, or, you're a spy for the Gare royal court. And so basically you can only go on 4 adventures a year. And so what I wanted to do is I wanted to kind of set up this idea that, so on the War Road, there are 2 city-states that are developing. And over the course of this 10-year campaign, if you play through the adventures, and there's plenty of room, right? I provide 1 adventure a year for the north side and 1 adventure a year for the southern part of the War Road. So that's 1 out of 4. So GMs can still just kind of add whatever they want to it, which was a design feature. I've seen a couple of people complain about that. I'm like, well, it's not a bug. It was actually designed that way. That's how I want to run games. I don't want an adventure path as much as I love Paizo, where every step of the story is kind of laid out for me. I much prefer like Night Below, where here's kind of like the main parts, but you got to fill in the rest yourself. Eventually, at the end of the Fall of the Children of Bronze, the 2 city-states go to war, and depending on what the players do, one of those city-states falls and is kind of absorbed into the other one, making kind of a unified kingdom now on the War Road. And a lot of people were like, well, why would you change the setting so quickly? I'm like, it's 9 years of play. You're going to have plenty of time in the setting as is. But if you play through the whole campaign, your characters have made a massive change onto the setting. And that's something I love as a player. I want to know that my hero didn't just do something and was forgotten, that they made like an intrinsic change to the world.
Yeah, no, I mean, the passage of time in a campaign is, I think, something that a segment of GMs want to establish, right? But it's not easy, especially in a D&D game or low fantasy game, any of those games. It's like, because the characters are almost ready to get up and go right away again.
Yeah.
And if they're not, then people are like, well, what am I supposed to do while my character's out for 6 months or whatever? Oh,
Right.
make another character. There's a lot of different ways. And I find it interesting that you tried to do that. Is there, it would be bad of me if I didn't mention a railroad. When people start talking about adventure paths, they talk about railroads, but I don't know. It doesn't have to be 9 years, right? I mean, GMs could do whatever they want. Maybe
they can
even
do
let
whatever they
players
want.
stop the war from happening or however. But I really like the concept of what you're talking about.
Yeah, and the first 5 adventures for each side of the war road, definitely, they can almost be played in any order. They build on each other, but there's a little bit of modularity to them. But there's this impending sense of, this war is huge, and everyone knows it's eventually going to happen. I was inspired by Donald Kagan's on the origins of war, and he's like, listen, we've had fewer years of peace in the history of mankind than we have of war. And if you look at like from Thucydides on, everyone goes, yeah, no, we all saw it coming. And then after they're done, they're like, we should never do this again until the next time it happens, that everyone sees it coming and nobody does anything to stop it. And then it happens again. So I would love to hear stories about jackals who stopped the war. That would be amazing. But then once you get into the last 5 adventures, if you haven't stopped it at that point, there are 2 city-states that are heading towards it. So you either get out of the way or pick a side.
Mm-hmm.
Much like when 2 nations go to war, 2 kingdoms go to war, if the few aren't actively trying to keep the peace, then once war starts, it's almost too late to stop anything at that point.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I would agree with all that. That sounds really intriguing to me. So I'm going to circle back a little bit. I asked you, like, if you had any mechanics that that you used to keep that simulation or to make it feel like Bronze Age. Is there anything else, that you feel like you did, or is necessary, or is it not that necessary, or what do you? I mean, obviously you think it was, because you looked like you worked pretty hard to keep it that way. So what else did you do?
So other things, just like the way I worked on magic, I didn't want magic to feel kind of Vancian, and so basically right now there are 8 different traditions of magic, and they're all cultural. Like every culture has 2 different types of magic that they can use. And I've got as long as jackals keep selling, like I just turned in the manuscript for book 3, I'm hoping to do a magic book here soon that will add a new tradition for each culture.
Oh, nice.
But the idea of in the Bronze Age, culture and religion are what drove magic. There wasn't just like this sort of almost agnostic or atheistic magic that we see in D&D or in Gygaxian fantasy games. It was, hey, if you're a Ger, or in our world, if you're an Egyptian, here's the way you understand the world, and that's how your magic and religion works. And so magic is all based off devotion to different entities and beings, and this idea that humans only get magic through these relationships with beings. A lot of the downtime actions are tied to the Bronze Age, like increasing your kleos, so you'll be remembered, right? That's what Achilles wants in the Iliad. All he wants to do is be remembered. I mean, he wants to do a bunch of other things, but that's kind of one of his driving passions. And then the monsters that I picked, I have a very narrow band of monsters. And somebody was like, well, you're going to add more monsters to the game. I'm like, I really don't think I will. I have a couple of ideas on how to customize monsters. If I did like a monster book where I would allow GMs to switch out abilities for monsters. But the idea was there's really only this narrow band of things that you see in like Greek, Egyptian, Sumerian mythology. I'm not going to put in cloud giants or
Harpies. I don't know.
Harpy. Well, I mean, harpies. Harpies, I would add. But yeah, like,
Well, they are in Greek myth.
Yeah, they are in Greek. There's this very
Yeah.
narrow band. The other thing that is really baked in is sort of the broad, and this goes to the struggle that you were talking about. Good and evil really doesn't even really enter into play. It's really civilization versus chaos, and chaos not as disorder, but like dissolution and non-being, and like the things on the outskirts of the city that the gods drove back, but it's now humanity's turn to keep them driven back, or else they're going to come back in and lay waste to everything. And so those were kind of the main mechanical things that were informed by kind of my decision to make it a Bronze Age game.
So I would be remiss if I didn't ask you, like, sometimes when people are trying to make D&D into be, a Bronze Age or different ages, they're cutting out like plate armor, or they're saying, okay, you have to use bronze weapons, or you have to use flint weapons. And that really like even limits, like in a game where the characters can already feel like they're not experts at what they're doing right now, they're even worse because like say Dark Sun, they use like obsidian or whatever, and your weapons were terrible and you had crappy armor. How did you deal with that?
Well, I mean, the thing is bronze was pretty bronze is ubiquitous in Jackals. So like everything you're coming against is bronze. So I did not lean into any sort of difference like that. I did try to make sure that like all of the armors were, the lucky thing for me is that Osprey is the one who published this. And so I was able to go to Osprey and go, hey, I need a bunch of these military reference books you have on the Bronze Age for Jackal's purposes. And they were like, oh, well, we'll send you whatever you want. And so, I went through all of their Greek ancient warfare lines and their Egyptian ones. So like all of the armor and weapon that I chose for the game are very much indicative of what was going on there. Now I do have plans if we start expanding the territory a little bit, heading more towards the east or the north, there will be tribes that have iron weapons. And in that case, I've got a couple of cool mechanics for like what happens when an iron sword clashes with a bronze weapon, because that's where you start getting into some of these things. But Jackals is so firmly kind of in the middle of the Bronze Age that I didn't really feel like I limited the weapons and the armor types, but I didn't feel like I had to come up with like as you said, like the dark sub level of, well, what happens if an obsidian sword hits stone armor? Like that's not something that's necessarily going to happen in here. So,
which is cool. I mean, some people forget like how long of a period the Bronze Age is, right?
It's
I mean,
huge. Yeah.
you're not going to play the same characters for hundreds of years, or even the same lineage of characters in the same civilizations, probably.
Yeah.
So that makes sense. All right, man. I mean, that sounds pretty good. It sounds like you put a lot of thought into it. If I was a good interviewer, I probably would have read the book and been able to ask, very pointed questions. But this seems good for.
That's
I know
the after show.
That's right. No, maybe. I know some guys who would be very excited about the concept of how you did try to stick to a certain age and then used Osprey books actually in research to cover that. That's awesome. All right. So is there anything specific about the Jackals line that you wanted to talk about before we talk about some of this other stuff that's on the list? Or
So I did just turn in the manuscript for the third Jackals book. That's mainly going to be a look at the 4 different cultures. So you can only play as humans. So it's the cultures that define your characters. And I really leaned into the fact that really culture just affects the skills that you're taught in your youth and what, religion that you have. And so I basically, it'll be 4 chapters and it'll expand out the cultural information for people. I'll add 4 new spells 4 new rites for each ritual path. So that makes it doubles the amount of rites from the core book. It has a specific piece of gear thanks to Kevin, who was like, in the very first game of Jackals he was running, he's like, there's no rules for quivers. And I'm like, how did I forget quiver rules?
Because everyone should be using slings in the Bronze Age, of course.
Oh man, slings are terrifying. We always hear the story of like David and Goliath, and Like, actual sling stones were like that big. Like, they were the size of your fist, and they would just come in and punch through armor and bone. It's not like he's taking little rocks. He's taking like rocks the size of his fist and throwing them at this giant, which is something I hope happens in everybody's Jackals game.
Another guy that I play games with always talks about how poorly the slings are portrayed. And if you really knew anything about slings, they'd be way tougher than they are in games. So that's great. See, all these guys that I use. Would you call Jackals an OSR game?
Oh, it definitely has an OSR. How would I? So it all depends, I guess, on how you define the R in OSR.
You're defining it, so you get to say whatever you want.
So then, yeah, it totally is. Here's why: because you need to track time.
There's no good campaign without the strict timekeeping.
The Gygax quote, yeah. It is brutal. I had somebody, a good friend, explain RuneQuest Glorantha to me, and I feel like this applies to Jackals, where your limbs are your sanity points. Like, you can get corrupted, you can lose limbs, you can be scarred, you can lose ears, and I think part of the reason there's hirelings. It is about bringing, going out into like kind of the core thing is going out. It's the reason they're called Jackals. They go out and they scavenge these dens for monsters and bones and treasure and bring them back to civilization. So I'm a huge OSR fan. So I would say, yeah, it's definitely in the vein, as you said in your introduction here, right? All of your games are run in the old school vein, regardless of system.
I like it.
Even when I run 5e, it's brutal. So yeah, I would definitely put it in that
all right,
in that oeuvre.
That sounds great. So a new segment that I'd started. You can choose: is it your legacy or is it your epitaph in the old school? What would it be?
Oof, legacy or epitaph. So
maybe it's not. I don't even know, because I don't know if most people would consider it or not. I'll have to look at it and see what I think. But a lot of the old school people I know have never heard of it. So, but go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
So I would say that. So my legacy from the OSR is definitely what is called the death salute in my game. I have a reputation of running pretty. I don't want to say brutal, but like, the consequence hammer falls where the consequence hammer will. And so I've gotten into the tradition of giving a death salute when a character dies in my games. And it is something of a badge of honor among my players how many times they get the death salute. So I feel like that's sort of my legacy, is the fact that there are people in like Colorado Springs and in Chicago and now in Texas who have experience the joy of the OSR, where, no, I'm sorry, your character's dead. Well, what can I do about it? You can make a new character.
Make a new character. All right, this is what you do. Grab 3 6-sided dice. No, I like it, man.
I've actually done that in a game. Somebody did. I was running a Heroes Unlimited game, and I put the puzzle box from Hellraiser into it, and they opened the puzzle box and they stepped inside. And they're like, what happens now? I'm like, well, now you get out a sheet of paper. And they're like, okay. I'm like, and you grab 3 6-sided dice. Okay. I'm like, and you write down physical strength and roll them. He's like, but that's how you make a new character. I'm like, it is how you make a new character.
Exactly. Nice. Awesome. So the death salute, that is definitely above the death stamp from DCC, I would say.
That's right.
It kind of reminds me of my rip and throw it in your face. That's kind of what I do when people die in person. But that's why I only run games online. Otherwise, I get beat up all the time. All right, my man. This has been a great discussion. We're going on 40 minutes, so everyone is going to... They tell me the show should be longer. I don't know. I feel like this has been a great show regardless. So I want to give some appreciation to some patrons of Hobbs and Friends who have still been patrons, even though I haven't done a show in months. They still were patrons. So I usually only give 3 shout outs, but this time I'm going to read a bunch of names. So you can twiddle your thumbs there, or, like talk to people in the twit and the chat, or whatever you want to do while I read these off. All right. So here we go, guys. I want to thank everyone for sticking around. Barry Furkis, Justin Russell, Eric Jeppesen, James Richards, Brian Lee, Mike Hess, Benjamin Brodel, Noah Fiegel, Mark Grehan, Arlen Walker, Inkwell Ideas, Taylor Beeson, Brian Tracy Colt, Nicholas Burden, Derek Jones, Pickpocket Press, Scott Smith, DM Dave, Aaron Coleman, Stu Clark, James Malashevsky, Vance A., Jonathan Carnes, Darren Green, Colin Spike Pit Green, Robert Nemeth, Andrew Merrington, Brian Rumble, David Bresson, Curtis Takahashi, Carl Rodriguez, Jason Connerly, Stan Polson, Noah Green, Thaddeus G. Moore, Kevin Madison, Ben Lawrence, Keith Nelson, Jesper Olson, Mark Diamante, Chris Lorcella, Alessandro Bertolici, Patrick Stevens, Eric Talvola, Gordon Cranford, Todd McGowan, Sean P. Kelly, Jay Murphy, Frank Brooks, next page, Julian Burnick, and Steve Siggety. Thank you guys so much for being a patron of Hobbs and Friends. I don't know if I can really tell you in words how much I appreciate it, but I hope that shout out on the podcast helps, and thank you so much for doing it. If you ever want to become a patron of Hobbs and Friends, it is www.patreon.com/OSRN Hobbs. So, my man, J-M, do you have anything that you want to pimp here in the last couple minutes?
Oh, sure. You can find me on theiconicpodcast.com, on YouTube or on Twitch. We're Iconic Production. If you find us on YouTube, you'll find a backlog of Jackals. I ran 2 short Jackals campaigns. We do a podcast about 13th Age once every other week called The Iconic Podcast. And then once a month with my good friend Evan, we do Exploring Glorantha, where we're trying to take this grand world that Greg Stafford put together and are really trying to kind of break it down and make it digestible and easy for people who are coming to it to kind of get access and start playing in that world. I've got a new podcast that we're going to be starting in January that's going to be talking about grand campaigns. I hate the fact that we keep seeing these statistics that say most RPG games only last about 6 episodes. And so seeing as I have multiple games that are over 3 or 4 years long, I'm going to try and see about giving some advice to counter this like disposable RPG stuff and like really get into kind of like the meat of a game for me starts at like month 9 or 10. Like everything before that is just sort of setup. So
sounds fascinating. If you ever want some talks about running West March's open table games,
yes,
that's what I do mostly. So
cross promotion.
I love it. It sounds great. Do you have some, I guess I'll say, if you want to reach me on Twitter, I'm at OSRN Hobbs, or I have my personal account at Hobbs Indeed. I'm really terrible at keeping them separate. You can find me on, I have the Hobbs and Friends Facebook, the Discord, the Gamerhood Discord, Random Screed Facebook, Twitch /Hobbs665, and YouTube, Jason Hobbs. You got any other deets you want to just rip out there quick?
I mean, you can find me at DeFoggi JM on Twitter. And that's really about all that I am. The only places that I'm at online. Also, check out the Ulysses International channel on Twitch. So it'd be twitch.tv/Ulysses International. I run games there twice a week on Tuesdays and Thursday night. But don't watch the Tuesday night show until after you've watched Jason's show.
What time does your show start?
We start at, I know this, we start at 7:30 Central.
Oh, I think that's exactly when we're starting. until 10 probably, so we can switch. We could raid each other. It'll be a blast. All right, my man. Any last words?
Just get out there and do more gaming. Like I feel like gaming is one of the few things that we still do in this modern world where we're getting friends together and we're telling stories, and I feel like that's super important. So. My standard sign off at the end of all of the shows is stay safe, stay healthy, stay gaming, and like I hope that rings true for all of the people listening to this podcast.
I agree, and like I often say, it's better to burn out than to fade away.
That's you and the Kurgan.
Me and Def Leppard. That's what.
Yeah.
That's where it originally came from that I know of. But yeah, so all right, the podcast is over. It's downloading.
Awesome.
I think you can see on Cast that it's going. So we can just like talk to the chat. We can do whatever you want, man. I'm pretty pumped about that. I'm gonna, like I said, as soon as I started reading this and I saw you on Musings on Kevin's channel, I was like, oh, I'm gonna run this. I don't know if you remember, but I asked you about the fall.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, I'm thinking about running this, but I often run a lot of my own stuff. And where would this fit in? It would definitely be something that I would do online because that's where most of my gaming
Well, and I think
takes place.
I mentioned at the beginning of fall where it's just like there's like two or three ways to run it, and one of them is just take the adventures that you like and ignore sort of the meta plot, if you will. So,
Which is the way it should always be, right?
yeah.
Someone's sending me something on Twitch, but I can't look at it because I have this other thing on. Oh, well. What are you going to do? All right, so I really want to thank all the people that did come here from the Iconic Discord. So thanks, guys. It's awesome that you showed up here to support JM. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
I think he had a question here. Rystar96, what social aspects of that era have you worked to incorporate into the non-combat aspects of Jackals? I think you went into this a little bit. Is there anything you want to add?
Yeah, like one of the things that I definitely did is you've got the especially with the downtime actions, like you can start allying and becoming entering into patronage, which is really more like covenantal vassalage, I think is how the Bronze Age would term it, but that's a really nerdy way to put that. So as you are going out and doing these adventures, there are powerful kings and leaders of cults and leaders of societies that will actually, if you do things for them, they will kind of ease your way through the world. And as you sort of rank up these relationships with these powerful people, you get benefits and you get responsibilities. Also, this idea of Kleos, which is kind of your reputation as it's increasing. You have one, chaos starts seeing you and they start trying to attack you and kill you because you got a better reputation. But also you may lose control of your downtime actions because a very important person may come to your house to spend part of the season with you. And then you have the choice. Do I give up my downtime action to engage in hospitality, which is a huge thing in the ancient Near East? Or do I basically snub this important person and go do what I want to do? Which also, I mean, you have a choice, but there are bonuses and penalties either way.
Consequences, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. All right. Like I say, I have to read it, otherwise I'm not. Can I be a powerful concubine? Rystar 96 wants to know.
Yes, you can always be a powerful concubine. I mean,
in any age,
I need to make special rules for that, but
yeah. What about? I heard you mention Axe a few times. What do you think of the downtime type actions in that game? And because that obviously that was done by an economist almost, right?
Yeah.
That system. So did you take a lot of that for inspiration, or?
So I mean, not a lot of it for inspiration because one, he did just such a great job building that, but he also really built it for medieval. I mean, there's some rules at the end about how to adjust population densities for different time periods. But I very quickly came to the conclusion that one, someday I will run my grand Axe campaign and use all of the bells and whistles. And two, I don't have enough hours in the day to do that much research on the economy of the Bronze Age. And I know that the information's out there because we have just literal tons of clay tablets, and there's a large chunk of them that are just, and then I sent like 16 talents worth of oils to you know who, and we have a lot of like bureaucratic records from that age. But I wanted, and this probably comes from my love of 13th Age and my discussions with that guy, that game designer, is that at the end of the day, I want the game to simulate the parts of the world that I love, but still be fun to play.
Mm-hmm.
And while there are several people in my gaming group who would love the economic minutia of Axe,
Not fun for you?
Not necessarily fun for me. Like
Yeah.
that's a mechanic that I would turn over to the players and say, okay, you add it all up. You figure out your spreadsheet. You figure out, I've got all of the, you know, if this town wants this good and you buy it in this town, I've got that all figured out because that's part of my campaign prep. But I'm not going to be the person tracking that. If you want to engage with that, you go and do that. So
No kidding. Awesome. All right. So unicorns are for everyone. Hey, welcome back to the Gamerhood, man. I haven't seen you in a while. He wants to know that he heard travel mechanics are important in your game. Is that accurate?
that is very accurate. One of the other mechanics that I crafted for jackals is this idea of, so you have wounds, and if you get to wounds, you are hosed. That's when scarring and loss of limb happens. But you have this attribute called metal, and it works with valor. And so valor works a lot like hit points. It's like your fighting spirit. So I've made it so that, right, Achilles goes out and kills a bunch of people, and then he takes a breather and he's fine. So as long as you don't take wounds, your valor sort of comes back pretty quickly. But when you're doing travel, you plot the route across the Zaharets, and then the GM breaks it up into travel segments, and everyone makes these travel rolls based off of how dangerous the terrain is, and or how easy the terrain is. And some of the terrain's really dangerous. Like if you fail the rolls, you start getting corrupted because you're traveling through like this chaotic wasteland. But what happens is you take metal damage from this. So your valor, your ability to kind of stay in the fight gets weakened. And if you get attacked on the road, your valor goes down. And so there is this sense, because in the Bronze Age, you walk or you ride a chariot everywhere. There's not this sense of, well, I get on a horse and in an hour I'm going to be somewhere else. It's like, no, it's like a 3-day journey to the next small town, or a week or 2-week journey to the next largest city. And so travel really had to be a core part of that. But I also wanted it to have some mechanical effects beyond just let's make a couple of rolls and see if you have encounters. So it can actually exhaust you to the point where you're gonna die. Like you need to stop at these towns and get your breath back and rest and recover your stamina essentially before you head back out into the wild.
Nice. So you're going to North Texas. What are you running on the books?
I don't know yet. I'll probably run jackals. I'll probably sign up and run several jackals and then spend, most of my year's income and the rest of the time in the dealer room, because I've heard that the dealer room at North Texas is spectacular, and I can fill in some holes on my 2E bookshelf.
Depends on what you're looking for. I know that I bought my Holmes box set at North Texas.
Oh, awesome.
So, there's some cool stuff there. Nice. So what are you playing? What are you playing off the books then? This is just like a open question. Like what would you run if you went to a con? I'm just curious.
Oh man, if I could just go and run anything, I love Warhammer Fantasy. I really want to get a Warhammer Fantasy 4th edition game going. I love the old world. Talk about a game that pairs its setting and its system just beautifully. Or I'd run some Cthulhu. I really have a thing for cosmic horror, and Golden Goblin Games just put out Cthulhu Invictus, the new edition of Cthulhu Invictus, and I'm like, yes, I would totally run a Roman Cthulhu game.
Have you ever played Cthulhu Invictus or not?
I have not played Cthulhu Invictus. I played a lot of Call of Cthulhu, but I haven't had a chance to play the new Invictus.
Okay, because I do know that the GMologist Carl Rodriguez, who plays in Kevin's Astonishing Swordsman and Sorcerers of Hyperborea game, has been running that. So
very cool.
I started a whole group of podcast people, so it's a more like it used to be the OSR anchorites, because most of the podcasts are done on Anchor.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but
No,
it's
I haven't.
most of the group is at the Audio Dungeon Discord.
Okay.
So if anyone wants to talk to a bunch of people who do anchor podcasts, which are much easier than almost any other podcast, I might add, then you might want to check that out. If not, it's up to you. So, all right. Is there anything else? You got any questions, or is there anything you want to cover before we wrap up this post party?
No, man, I really appreciate this. This has just been a great time. I love chatting about gaming, and I mean, if you need anyone to talk Malazan, if you and Arlen get back into that, you let me know, because I adore the Erickson stuff. I've read through it multiple times. It's most people reread like Robert Jordan or Brandon
Tolkien.
Sanderson. Yeah, and I'm like, nope, time to start the 10 big books all over again.
So, do you have a favorite Malazan book?
Oh man, yes. Let me see if I can figure it out in my head.
Now, it doesn't have to be one of the 10. Kind of a trick question. It could be any.
It is. I mean, like
any Malazan book. It could be Ian. It could have been Esselmont if you'd want, or whatever.
I think for me, my two favorites. I mean, they're all great, but I love Memories of Ice. Like Covian's whole journey is spectacular. And then the Bauchelain and Corball Broach books.
This is my favorite.
Crackpot Trail.
This is probably my favorite Erickson book right here.
It's basically the Canterbury Tales, but with more cannibalism. Like why?
I just love the just the way he wrote this book. This is probably my very favorite book.
Yeah, that one's great. I also have you ever read the Second Apocalypse books by Baker?
I don't think so.
Oh man, they're really dark. Like they are grim dark to the extreme.
Which Baker?
R. Scott Baker.
Okay, that sounds familiar. I will write that down. We will be reviving the Libram Society. I'm positive of that. We just got to find out when we're going to do it. And someone in chat, Unicorns or everyone, asked us to revive Hex Talk. I don't know if you've ever heard of that podcast before.
No, what's that one?
So me, Eric Hoffman, and Jose Lucario, it's bounced off of this Hobbs and Friends. We did an episode of Hobbs and Friends that we called Hex Talk, and we just talked about making hex crawls and ways to do it.
Awesome.
And so then it got enough people that liked it. We branched it out into its own podcast, and we did about 9 or 10 episodes of us just talking about how to do a hex crawl, basically, and different ways to create things. And I definitely get a lot of feedback about that and people wanting to do that again. In our opinion, I felt like we covered the subject. It was like you should be able to run your own hex crawls now. I don't know, but I've also done like some point crawl stuff with Chris Kudalik, if you know who that is from.
Yeah. Well, when we get to that part of about Grand Campaign, I'll reach out and we'll have you on the show.
Oh man, that'll be fun.
Yeah.
People will be sick of hearing my voice by then, probably. I don't know. All right. Does anybody in the chat have any questions? I'll check YouTube. You've been a great guest. I really appreciate it. Like I said, I needed someone who could hold their own and take over if I just started zoning out. And you did great, man. So I appreciate
thank you. I'm like seriously, if you ever want to talk games, just let me know. I'll set some time aside. I love doing it. So
I have this other thing that I do that is only on here. It's called Bygone Exhumations, so BX, and I did one episode with Arlen, but it is something where I just wanted to do it that doesn't have the structure of Hobbs and Friends or none of that. And it's just, you just, whatever you feel like talking about at the time, you just kind of talk about it. So maybe we could do that sometime. That'll be fun.
I would love to do that.
You got a good mic. You got a good bald head like mine. So
that's
right. We look great together. So
that's right. Got the same kind of the same scruff. Like it works out great.
Man. When you get old like me, then you'll fit right in. All right, so I think I'm going to hit this music, and thanks everyone for being here. What he said.
Awesome.
It's a beautiful day in the game, oh, a beautiful day for my gamers. Would you be one? Could you be one? Shout about thunder, but don't despair. This colony's breeding great robbers. Would you be one? Could you be one? If the 80% mortality rate works for you, for a few bucks a month you can sign up and have the Hobbs kill you. So let's make the most of another Sunday. Brew up some coffee and play it my way. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? Won't you be my gamers? Won't you be? Won't you